When you go into the filters, there's a drop-down menu, which when you click on it, reveals itself to not actually be a drop-down menu, but rather a pop-up menu. And there's all these preset filters that you can click on and do everything from flipping the orientation of the video to making it black and white, or different types of black and white with some film grain. You can change it into their idea of what comic strips look like, kind of rotoscope. Again, although a lot of it's kind of gimmicky, you can find use for it at different times. The stuff that I find most useful and understated is like the negative stuff, especially when you choose a negative filter and then make use of manual color correction to get it to your taste, and then even perhaps duplicate the same clip, reset all the effects, maybe not the time, then alter the translucency of the other clip. This is the one thing I didn't tell you about yet that I should have, and I'll go into more detail, but when you have a clip and you click this square icon that represents two clips and how they interact with each other, you're given the choice of cutaway, blue screen, green screen, split screen, or picture-in-picture. And in cutaway mode, you have control over the opacity. So we can take that clip underneath that's negative and blend in the normal version of the clip as much or little as we like and wind up with attributes of both clips. If you wanted to, you could even then export this and repeat the process with green screen, blue screen, and even though there's no green screen or blue screen involved, the algorithm will kind of figure out on its own how to merge the two clips. And these boundaries allow you to decide what part of the clip is affected and what part is the original. So I guess in that case, we'll move on to these options. So when you only have one clip, that doesn't even show up. It's only when two clips are stacked on top of each other that the way they interact is anything you have an option of manipulating. Cutaway is the first option. You can control the opacity of the clip and how it fades in and out. You'll see down here on the clip, when I increase the fade in time, little handles slide on their own. We'll right click on this clip and select hide speed editor to get that handle out of the way, and then over here we'll zoom in and you can see these fade in handles. You can make the fade in longer or shorter as you see fit. And one of the things that it took me a really long time to figure out, which is pretty obvious if you're used to using OS, but I never thought of it, is how do you change this fade in time without affecting both the fade in and the fade out? Well, you hold Alt, and then you can move one end of the fade in, fade out, one handle at a time independently. When I started figuring things like that out, that was what inspired me to make these videos, because a lot of stuff you just take for granted, and it's not overtly represented in the program how that would work. Another one of those things is if you go up here into modify, you can sometimes join clips. You have the option. Let's see if it'll let us do it. Got two clips and highlight them both. Modify, no. I don't know why or when it decides you should or shouldn't be able to, but sometimes you can say cut a clip and then join it back together. I'm not really sure what the criteria is for being able to do that, but if you're in a pinch, check. It can be helpful. Another thing that you can do in view is snapping. Sometimes that'll be on by itself, sometimes it's not, but it'll affect the way your cursor behaves, and you can turn it on and off from view. The next option in the way that clips interact with each other is blue screen, green screen. We've already demonstrated how that works basically, but the two main features are in cleanup, whether you're using hard boundaries to decide the way the clips interact, or via this eraser icon, selecting what colors you want it to focus on with how it blends the clips. And when you're using non-green screen, blue screen clips, obviously the effect is a lot less articulate than it would be if I were to use some of this actual green screen and go into GIMP and cut out these houses, and then they would be static on the green screen and only the sky would be moving. That's a whole nother video though. That's a complicated process. Split screen, it's pretty limited in my opinion because it doesn't afford you, that I know of so far, the ability to change a clip's position within the split screen. It's just gonna split it where it thinks it should be split and duplicate it how it thinks it should be duplicated. One thing that you can do in this scenario is make use of the filter to flip the video, and then that kind of gives you bookends, which are obviously gonna look better. If you're using two clips with the same visual treatment, it'll work a lot better. So we'll split screen two of the original version of the clip, and then we'll use the filter to flip the one on the top, and then you've got like a weird bookend effect. If you rely on sort of the techniques of 4-track audio recording and bounce this image out, you can then bring it back in and continue this effect ad nauseum, really. And that's sort of the mindset that you need to have with iMovie, is not expecting there to be a one button solution for things. You have to think and be creative and figure out how you can use basic effects and limited techniques in combination with each other to create more complicated effects. So that's split screen. I don't much make use of it. Picture in picture I use all the time, constantly. If you watch my videos, I'm sure you're aware of that. It gives you a smaller version of the clip that you're applying picture in picture to, the scaling of which you can manipulate by dragging in any one of the 4 cardinal directions. And again, like I illustrated with the fade in handles, if you press Alt, you can scale out from the center, and if you press Shift, you can skew it disproportionate to the respective aspect ratio. You have control over the dissolve, which is the fade in, which again can be done manually with these handles in tandem or one at a time by holding Alt. You can actually even type in a number of seconds for it to dissolve in, and you can add borders to it, either thinner or thicker, and you can control the color of them. And there are a few different ways you can control the color. You can use RGB sliders or a color wheel. This is a pretty inarticulate process, and if you're trying to replicate the same particular hue and shade again and again throughout a project, it can be pretty difficult. A way you can avoid this, which is much more time consuming, is to, instead of putting a border on a clip, you can use solid colors as picture in picture, bounce the video, and then once you have these 2 clips in here as one clip, you can, instead of a solid color picture in picture, then add a clip over this and make it slightly smaller so that you have this picture in picture as the border, and that's much more easily reproduced throughout the entirety of the project. That's about it, really.